Hey, everybody, this is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today, we're talking with Chris Ruden, amputee, world record holding powerlifter, professional speaker, and author who appeared on Dwayne The Rock Johnson's hit TV show Titan Games. He hid his disability for 17 years, and then he decided to step into the light and become an inspiration to people all over the world. I'm super excited about this because I think it's so important to embrace who we are and what makes us unique. So, with that, welcome, Chris, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, I know you're going to be sharing some amazing tips with us, but I have to start with your background. So, give us a sense of your youth and what your background was like.
So I was born with two fingers on my left hand and a shorter left arm. I grew up in a poor area. My family never had money, but I definitely knew I was different. You know, um, I feel like a lot of people go through bullying, which is, I hate to say it, normal, but I definitely had my share of it. Being a person who looked different, I was made to feel like a monster for a majority of my life, and it's for a condition or a situation that I never asked for. And I find that most adversity is that way. I struggled a lot to accept who I was, and I did the opposite. I accepted who I could never be. I could never be one of those guys on the magazine. I could never be one of those guys who was super successful, given my family, given where I was growing. I created a lot of limits based on how I looked, how I was born, and what I could or couldn't have. So when you live with those limits, it's exhausting and it's defeating. And it's almost a sense of learned helplessness where you're like, I just can't really do much. Took a long time, 17 plus years of hiding my hand and questioning if I was worth even being here, to saying maybe. Not a Disney moment of incredibleness, not like some big awakening. No, it was like maybe. I got a little bit more curious, and that curiosity took me to where I am today and where I'll go for the rest of my life. And what I teach people is, yes, how to see your world without limits, but how to take that first step, and the first step is terrifying because it's unfamiliar. But I went from that broken kid who felt useless and helpless to a world record holding powerlifter on a TV show with The Rock and in People magazine. And on paper, I sound really cool, but I can go into a grocery store now and not hide my hand. And that's probably my biggest accomplishment. So I'm excited to talk with you, your listeners, and give any value I can.
I mean, that's remarkable. And I think that, it takes a lot of courage, right? Because especially kids, they don't even always understand how hurtful the things that they say or the way that they treat other people can be. As adults, we don't really have an excuse. Like, we know better. But as a kid, I think sometimes people don't know. And so I think anything that you have that stands out, I'm not comparing the two by any way, shape, or form, but I have a very deep voice. I was actually born with this voice. And so I can at least relate to the part of your journey in terms of not liking something about you. It was something that when I was a little boy in school and I was whispering with my friends in the back of the room, the teacher would say, with their back turned, Brett, stop talking. Because they could tell my voice, and it was embarrassing to me.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. And it wasn't until years later where I realized, but that's one of the things that, makes me unique. So, I mean, kudos to you, like to have the courage and just wisdom to be able to say, I'm gonna turn this and I'm gonna live the life that I wanted to live. So did you hide it specifically because you felt as though people wouldn't accept you, or was it more of an internal thing? Like, was it people that were saying things or doing things to you, or was it just that you didn't feel right about yourself because of it?
Man, I think I felt like a burden, to my parents. Like my parents had a kid that looked like me, and I thought that was awful. So if already that's a struggle, anything that was happening at school, if I was getting bullied or like it was bad, my mom would always ask me like, "Oh, hey, how was your day?" And I would lie and say it was great. I always said it was great, even when it wasn't, and most of the times it wasn't. but I wanted to protect my parents from realizing that they had a monster, that they did all this work and they're struggling and to put food on the table for a kid that looked like me. You know, I to me that wasn't okay, and I didn't understand. You know, obviously hindsight is 2020. You can have a million people telling you you're great, you're great, you're great, but unless you feel it yourself, it doesn't matter. And I think my mistake was I thought I didn't have courage. I thought I needed courage and I didn't have it because I had the wrong idea of what courage was. And I think most people do, and that's why they don't act. They think courage is this feeling of confidence. They think it's this overwhelming, I'm ready to do it and I'm going to do it. Courage is stupidity. Courage is ignorance. Courage is sheer terror, but making a choice. It's not a feeling of happiness and excitement to go into battle. You know, it's really like, okay, that's it. It's literally that. And summed up, it's okay. We're gonna do it. It's jumping in the deep end, even though you don't really know. I thought I was supposed to feel ready, and I think that's what I was waiting to feel ready. And I'm like, damn, 20 years in, and I still don't feel ready. I don't feel like it's the right time. I don't feel like I'm good. I was being run by my feelings, and I was like, well, feelings are not facts. What are the facts? Right now, what I'm doing is hurting me. Could I make this a little bit better? Instead of saying this is terrible, I'm like, how could I make it less terrible? How could I do something with where I'm at right now to change the trajectory? Because right now the trajectory is not what I want, you know? And that's why I want to reaffirm courage is not feeling confident or happy or ready. Courage is making the decision regardless or despite the feelings of readiness. That's it.
Yeah, I love that because I think it's so true. Everybody, thinks when they see somebody do something that they equate with being brave, wow, they must have had all this confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes it's the opposite, but they're
Yep.
like, I'm committed, I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So
Or it's
whatever happens.
impulsiveness. We see extroverts who are impulsive and we're like, wow, they're so confident. I'm like, no, they're just impulsive. That's not confidence. You know, there's a difference between being intentional and making a choice and just being impulsive. You know, impulsivity is not confidence. That's why those two words exist separately. So I think there is a space between impulsivity and just making a decision for you, whether it's starting a podcast, starting a business, or in a relationship. You have to decide every day that you're going to do it, that you're going to do the actionable steps in that day. You can't become married the first time you meet someone. You can't have a Joe Rogan podcast day one, you know, but to get anywhere near that level, you have to take a step. And for me, that step, I equated the step to be crossing the finish line with the first step. And a lot of people do. You know, everyone wants to hang out at the finish line and not run the race. I wanted that until I realized, like, okay, regardless of whether you're taking steps to your refrigerator or doing the Boston Marathon, both of those distances require one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
So
And so
breaking it
what
down.
was the first thing for you? Like what did you when you finally made the decision? I know it wasn't this like Disney moment
Yeah.
type thing, but how did you incrementally then say, okay, you know what? I'm just going to do this anyway. What was your path like for that?
Yeah. I think because I'm a professional storyteller, I'm obviously going to tell stories. So let's say middle school, I didn't know anything was really wrong until kids started pointing it out, you know? And there was this girl named Crystal, and she was the prettiest girl in my school. There was like two girls in my class, and one of them was a teacher. So like I didn't really have much choice, but at the time, that's what I was working with. I finally worked up the courage to ask her out, and my friends started laughing. And I turned around, I'm like, guys, stop, you know? I turned back around to see Crystal, and she's making fun of my hand with the stapler, calling me claw boy in front of the whole class. So that was probably the first time of many that I experienced like public humiliation. And I shoved my hand in my pocket and I pretended like it didn't hurt. And it killed me, you know? I kept my hand in my pocket for 17 years. I almost got arrested in Washington, D.C. at the monument as a middle schooler because I refused to take my hand out of my pocket. You know, so hard, so hard. I wouldn't take it out for anything, you know? So throughout the years, my identity became this guy who just hit his hand, and that I built confidence on a rocky foundation. Instead of like just hiding and not showing, I was breakdancing. I was doing drums. I shoved a drumstick through the finger hole of the glove, and I wore a glove all the time. And I made it seem like I was so confident, but it was false confidence, you know? So I started speaking randomly. I got type 1 diabetes at 19 years old, which is an autoimmune disease for the rest of my life. And I was like, all right, this is a joke. I can't be this disabled diabetic kid. Like, there has to be something that I can do with where I'm at. And I didn't know, but that's the start of that whole Socratic questioning method that I now help people with to figure out, okay, be more curious instead of certain. What can I do with all of this stuff? I got invited to speak at a diabetes related nonprofit event, and I fell in love with speaking. I fell in love with exercise and helping other people find different adaptations. And I was like, okay, cool, we're doing this, but I was still hiding my hand. It wasn't until a very specific event at a diabetes camp. I was there, there's probably 2,000 people to hear me speak. And it was at a Disney resort. I'm walking down this long hallway with this little girl. She's about 8, 9 years old. Her family just got diagnosed with diabetes. Spent all day with her, and I love this little girl. She was like, clung to me like all day. You know, I bought her a hat. It was super cool. She was standing on my left side, and I never usually let people stand on my left side because that's where I hid my hand, you know? And she grabs my hand and just starts swinging it, you know, like carelessly, like a kid would. And I froze. Like, every bit of me was like panic. And she just looked at me and she's like, it's okay. You don't have to hide around me. Dude, an 8-year-old. Like, thousands of people were there to hear me speak. But she was the only one who actually saw me. And I was like, all right, there has to be more. Like, I'm not hiding as well as I think I am. You know, I was hiding from myself too. So it kind of unearthed that. And I was like, all right, if I ever got a prosthetic arm, I won't hide my hand anymore. It was almost one of those conditional, like, if this, then that, because it's nearly impossible to get approved for a $100,000 arm. I got approved. And I'm a man of my word. So I made a video talking about like coming out and showing my disability. And at the time I was with a girl for 4 years. That was the first time she saw my hand. By editing that video for me. That was the first time she had ever saw my hand. I posted that video and I went to sleep just because it made me feel better. It was like my moment of like, all right, this is real. I'm putting it out in the open. I wake up to millions of views and thousands of comments. Reddit, YouTube went viral. Washington Post, Daily Mail, all of these, Snapchat on the homepage of Snapchat. And I'm like, but it was the best thing ever. It was jumping in the deep end. And it was one of those courage moments where it was an oh shit moment, to be honest. Like, it was terrifying in the best way possible.
That's amazing. I mean, amazing from the perspective of, first of all, this girl, you know, and how that can whole shift your whole paradigm with the way that you see things, but then also to have the courage to do that and to just say, you know, because when there's something we're trying and we haven't done it before, particularly if it's something that plays on our insecurity or something that we're nervous about, those things are the hardest steps to take and the hardest things. So, I mean, good for you. That's amazing.
Man, you just said something though that I want to remind people of, and I just learned this maybe a few months ago. You have no experience with the current moment you're in right now. It's the first time you've ever experienced this. So why the hell are you so hard on yourself? You have never been this old. You have never been in this day. You've never had this time. And you are acting like you should be a professional at something you have no experience in. Allow yourself to get better every day. And that mindset came because of all of the stuff I've gone through and because of how I help people now, organizationally and personally, helping companies or people to understand the process of like, all right, let's remove the resistance that's causing more of the problems and fix the root cause. Then we can make progress. But instead, we hold ourselves to these crazy high standards. There is a balance between wanting more for yourself and being at peace with what you currently have. It's not a this or that approach. It's not a conditional philosophy of if I had more followers, then I would be happy, or if I had more business, then I would be happy. No, no, no. If I found contentment in the moment, then maybe I could put my full effort towards everything else. That's your responsibility. And it's not just your responsibility, it's your responsibility ability. It's your ability to respond to anything that happens in your life. It is in your control. Easier said than done, absolutely, but better done than said.
I love that. And I think that, I was thinking about when you're talking about that, I was thinking about like even starting off the podcast, right? So when I first started it, my whole thought process was, well, how am I going to be able to create something where I have all the answers? I mean, I'm the expert at everything, right? I'm going to help other entrepreneurs. So that means I got to know everything about everything. And then I realized, wait a minute, no, I don't. We go through the journey together.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point is that so people recognize, you're not alone going through whatever you're going through. Other people are too. And ultimately, we work better when we work together. The fact of the matter is, it's the vulnerability, it's the admission that you don't know everything and that you don't have all the answers that actually makes you more human and connectable with other people. And for a long time, I felt like in order to do anything where I was typically behind the computer and did software and stuff like that, and I said, geez, you don't need the answers. You just got to be willing to go through the process and just be open about it. And I think that's I think it's great advice. I really do.
That was a huge part of my speaking business. The first 2.5 years that I've been speaking over the last 7 years, I was still hiding my hand. I was on stage talking about certain mental health components, still hiding my hand because it wasn't I'm a guru and you're listening to me. This is a peer-to-peer conversation. I can talk to you about the things that I've worked through and the things that I'm currently working through, but I can't teach you what I don't know yet. So I'm going to stay in my lane and not be fake about it, but at the same time, I'm going to be authentic enough to say, hey, listen, I'm not telling you all struggles are easy to overcome. I'm damn sure not using my disability to be like, if I can do it, you can do it too. No, because disability is normal and that's fine. I'm saying like, hey, I'm not perfect. Even in this moment now, I want to do a podcast. I'm terrified of starting it because it won't be perfect on day one. If it doesn't have 1 million downloads in 2 minutes, I'm going to be so upset. And that's an unrealistic expectation. It's nice, but if the goal is impacting people, it makes it a lot more digestible. And I'm saying what really drove me to get to where I am now with speaking, doing 6 figures worth of speaking, being able to speak maybe 20 times a year now instead of 50, 60 times like I used to, make double or triple the money in a quarter of the time. I've been able to buy back my time. I've been able to buy back my freedom and peace and do things like having multiple books or being able to travel with my girlfriend or just spend time. That has been priceless. Yeah, I got the cool dream car. I got all that cool stuff and that was nice, but I realized like that was cool for a little bit, but our attention span is so short. Like what's really cool is like I'm going to go to the gym today at 10, maybe 11, and I can afford that. That there is no Porsche out there that can replace that. So I think it's a different mindset that I've developed over time, and I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs, we get caught up in the I need to grind harder and harder and more and harder, and it's like constantly moving the goalpost. At this point today, most entrepreneurs that are actively in it, you are where you dreamed you would be a few years ago. You are. You've done everything you said you wanted to do. You've done so much of the things you thought could never be accomplished. The hardest moments in your life that you said you wouldn't make it through, you made through. But still, it's not enough. Or maybe it is enough and you're just being a little bit too rough on yourself. Appreciate where you are in the process of going further. The dichotomy of being happy and driven can exist and coexist if you allow it. I know it's hard, but trust me, I'm speaking to myself and to everyone else listening.
Yeah, and I think it's an important distinction. I do think that oftentimes we don't take the time to, especially just in society in general, things move so fast that there's very little time to reflect. There's very little time to appreciate stuff that really matters. And then you get to a point where if you don't have that anymore, whether it's like your health or whether it's a friend that, moved or passed away or whatever, then you wish you had it back and you would have done it differently. But you can only do it the way you're doing it as you go through life. And so it's smart to try to draw that balance and like you said, there's nothing wrong with still trying to achieve more,
At all.
but it shouldn't always be a feeling of inadequacy or not enough. It's just that hey, yeah, I still have other stuff I want to do, but I feel pretty good about who I am, where I am, and stuff I've already done. Um, then you have that balance of peace with still the ability to drive, but without feeling like you're missing something.
Exactly. And I think it's important to have that component of like, there, don't get me wrong, there needs to be times of obsession as an entrepreneur. There needs to be times of like head down and grind. You have to know when those times are, and you have to be aware enough and honest enough with yourself to say, hey, these 3 months, these 6 months, I need to head down and grind. It's going to be a little unbalanced, but that's okay. But if you are ruining your marriage, your relationships, you are ruining your friendships, you have no mental health whatsoever, I promise you, the finish line of the timeline you created yourself is what's causing you the majority of the problems. There is no finish line because time exists. It just exists. When people are like, oh, I just have no time, I'm like, no, we all have the same amount of time. Just the time you do have feels pressured by the pressure you put on yourself. There are ways, and it's hard. I get that. Trust me, I get it. But if you don't take time out for yourself, like I don't watch NASCAR, but I can only imagine what would happen if NASCAR, if they never took a pit stop because they wanted to get there faster. No car makes it all the way to the end without a pit stop. Just saying. So you can't redline it forever. And I tried. I tried many times and I failed a few different businesses because I redlined it, you know? And I get it, but be aware.
Yeah, no, I think that that's really important. So I know that there are people out there that are struggling with one thing or another. So what advice would you give someone for how they can get unstuck and, maybe even reinvent their lives if necessary?
So my book coming out in September, it's called The Art of Changing Course. It's how to get unstuck, and it's the whole art and science of change, whether it's internal change that you need to be the change catalyst for or reacting to external change that happens to you, and how to sustain change, because a lot of people go to the gym and they'll change for a few weeks and then they go back to their normal stuff. Um, I like to start with language. I think that's such a huge piece of the puzzle that we ignore because language is conditioning, you know? And I mean, we can do a little exercise right now, and I hope everyone kind of does this when they hear this too, and I'll do it right now. If you could, for me, really quickly, as fast as you can, say silk 6 times. Cool. What do cows drink? Water. They drink water. So it's a conditioning thing, and it happens every time. So when I do this with an audience of like 5,000, everyone's like pissing themselves laughing. It's great. But what I go to say is like, okay, if we can do it with just words that kind of rhyme, what happens when you say, I'm lazy, I'm lazy, I'm lazy, I'm lazy, I'm lazy? Well, you start to be lazy and you start to act lazy and you start to react lazy. You are not lazy. You have been lazy in the past, but it's not who you are. It's what you've done. Another exercise. I'll ask you personally, are you a morning person or a night person?
I used to be a big night person. Now I'm sort of in the middle, I would say. Yeah,
Okay.
my biorhythm tends to go toward night, I think.
So whether you think you're a morning person or night person, it's not really even true because it's just habits. You could start going to sleep later or you could start waking up earlier. You are not a morning person. I am not a gym person. I didn't come out of the womb lifting weights, you know? I go to the gym. I make a habit of going to the gym, but it's not who I am. And I think that's so relieving to understand that we can change our habits at any time and our language at any time to start changing our lives. If I just never finish anything, okay, how do we start? Where do we start? Maybe it's making your bed. Maybe it's brushing your teeth in the morning every morning if you don't do that. Maybe it's, sending out all of the emails before it. There is a habit that can change, that can start to change everything about you and every story you've told yourself. So ask yourself, when is the last time you were honest with yourself? I'm just not good at anything. Anything? Nothing. Zero. You've never washed a fork to completion. And it's funny, but we lie to ourselves so much and we use language that creates habits and behaviors that are reinforced, and it makes it near impossible to ever change. How could you change when you've conditioned yourself so much to say silk and milk, or condition you so much to be the person that never really does anything great in life? It starts with language. And that's one of the simplest ways to start fixing the way you speak about yourself and to yourself. Not just a self-love thing, because yeah, I guess that could be there too, but it's more so self-honesty, and radical acceptance that the language you use is an input similar to an AI system. When you input certain data, you're only going to get certain data back. So you're cherry picking, but in the worst way possible.
And I think, we're always, whether we recognize it or not, we're always having conversations with ourselves
Always.
anyway. I mean, our thinking is exactly that. And I've heard, I don't know the actual statistic, but I've heard that in the absence of deliberate, positive, or empowering thought, something like 80 or 90% of our thoughts are negative. The things that just constantly beat us down instead of lifting us up.
So I can speak to that. There is a passive system. It's called the default mode network that we kind of operate on. And especially in people who are higher skewed towards like depression or mental health issues, that default mode network, that language that's constantly running in the background of our minds, skews to negativity. So if we're passively always ruminating on negativity or always ruminating on potential failure, maybe it's a safety mechanism that we're trying to keep ourselves alive, lizard brain type stuff. If that default mode network is constantly resorting to negative thoughts and you're actively being negative too or actively putting yourself down, that's a losing battle. And it does start with, you have to be able to, I use this triangle thing when I talk to people about this: catch, challenge, change. And you have to be able to be aware of it. You have to challenge it and say, is this true? Because not all feelings are facts. You can feel like a loser, but it doesn't mean you are a loser. You can feel like this, but it doesn't mean you are this. And you have to change it. You have to manually do it. And it sucks in the beginning. It sucks. When I have a cool video set up now, but like when I just started, I'm like, things were falling over. It was so difficult to set up. I'd forget to plug in one thing and my audio's not plugged in. I'm like zoomed into half of my face. Now it's so standard and it's so easy. I've conditioned this process. I've gotten really good at this process because I speak all around the country. I didn't start that way. It's the same thing we were talking about in the beginning. Language or improving language, you have to start somewhere. And it starts with awareness, and awareness is super clunky when you first start. But it'll reveal a lot. Like, why am I saying that? That's just not true. It's wild.
It's awesome. So I know one of your specialties, you're obviously very good at this, is storytelling. Do you have any kind of, I'm a big believer in storytelling because I think that that's really draws audiences in. Everybody, as soon as somebody says, let me tell you a story, everybody's ears perk up, they lean in, it's exciting. Everybody wants a good story. So do you have any storytelling tips or tricks that you can share that other people might be able to use if they're trying to engage an audience?
I'm going to drop a few because it's my favorite topic. I've built my speaking business to like a really high point, and I absolutely love what I do. Getting to the point where you can charge $10,000 to $20,000 for a 30 to 45-minute keynote is incredible. But what's better than that is being able to teach other speakers how to do the same thing. So this is a very small project that I have, but I coach about 6 different speakers now, and on the art of storytelling, but also the business of scaling that. And it's so fun teaching storytelling tactics. So some of my favorite, the simplest one, it applies for copywriting too: show, don't tell. You know, I think that is probably the biggest problem I run into when I'm coaching speakers and hearing storytellers or people who want to be storytellers. They say, this will increase your marketing efforts tremendously. And I'm like, that doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. That doesn't mean anything. Versus, imagine waking up and knowing that all of those ad sequences that you created are now driving hundreds of thousands of dollars into your pipeline. That means a lot more to me. Show me, don't tell me. When you see a movie and it's winter, the actor doesn't come on screen and be like, it's cold, it is freezing, it is cold, temperature is low. No, you see snowflakes and you see the barren trees and then you see a girl shivering. Not a word was said. People don't understand that we speak through stories, but story is through showing, not telling. You can use telling to back up showing, but showing has to happen first. And one of my favorites from South Park, the writers of South Park say, you want to have creative storytelling, take out the word and just use the word but. Creates much more interest. I, started as a personal trainer and I went to school for exercise science versus I started as a personal trainer, but I completely changed my life. Now you're interested. And it's like, and it gets so boring. Using but, it creates contrast and controversy and change. And we love that because our mind's constantly trying to piece things together. So if you throw curveballs, it keeps people interested. So those are two little tips that I love using.
That's very cool. So I have to ask you about your powerlifting. Yeah, so you have a world record in powerlifting. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I, one hand and type 1 diabetes, but I competed against non disabled lifters. So I have one world record and four state records in powerlifting. My world record is in deadlift. So 675 pounds, below 200 pounds. So I was about 189 when I did it. And I made a hook that attaches to the bar. And anything over 500 pounds, I had to use like an additional wrap. Over 600 pounds, I had to use skin tack spray on my skin. And when I did that like record lift, there was actually like blood pooling out of my residual limb, like because of the pressure. I never believed having wrap above my elbow. I could have done that. It would have been better, but I thought that was cheating. So powerlifting was my thing for a long time. And then originally I wanted to be a bodybuilder, but I'm not symmetrical. You know, it took me 10 plus years of lifting weights to finally compete in my first bodybuilding competition against non-disabled people, and I actually won. So it was really cool to break all of those limits that I set. That was like I could never win against someone who has a symmetrical body. And I realized like, oh, that was a story. Stories are powerful. And if we believe the language and the stories that we tell, it's really hard to break out of those until you get the curiosity to start questioning like, is what I've been telling myself for the past 20 years real, or is it just a feeling?
Fascinating. Yeah, I've been a big fitness guy since my teens, and never a professional bodybuilder or set any records, but it's always something that's been a big part of my life. I taught my kids, to start young as well. So, it's part of their lives, and I just think it's really good and healthy anyway. But
Dude, it taught me all about failure. Like it made me okay with failure. And I think passively, I didn't even understand what I was learning. But when I failed, I'd be like, means next week I might get it, and it's that philosophy has been applied to so many things. And I don't think I would have made it this far in my businesses if I didn't have that because business is tough and grueling mentally, financially too. But like you have a business that you thought was going to be everything and it fails. That's rough to come back from. That's having 400 pounds on your chest and just sitting there and no one's in the gym to take it off. Like that's
trying to
it's
squeeze
something.
out of it to the
Oh yeah,
side.
it's
Yeah.
something. Like okay, the only way to get this off my chest is to look stupid, and like that sucks. But you learn, and I think everyone should have some form of that, some form of like resilience training, and resistance training is a good form of that.
Yeah, developing resilience is so important. I know it's one of the knocks that this, newer generation gets all the time because, in general, things have been easier for them, or at least that's the way it's perceived. And I know, resilience is one of those things that really matters because you've got to be able to just pick yourself up. I've heard owning a business being equated to being a professional problem solver. And I kind of agree with it because I know in my business, I mean, look, you're always looking to get to where you're trying to go, and there's always some obstacle in the way. So, in a sense, you're constantly either putting out fires, even when times are good, you're still
Yep.
doing things that you're always needing to break through the next barrier. And so, there's something exhilarating about that, but there's also something that does require fortitude. You have to be able to just say, look, it's not a great day. That happens sometimes. I'm just going to keep going. Tomorrow is going to be better. And so, yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. So I also have to ask you about your TV show appearance. I used to actually watch the Titan games,
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
yeah, I really liked it. I was an American Gladiators fan too.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I love the physical competitions. I thought, these people are amazing in terms of what they could do. What was that experience like being on that show?
Man, they reached out to me, so I didn't even apply for the show. Like 100,000 people plus applied for the show. They reached out to me and I was like, this has to be fake. There's no way, you know? They invited me out to LA to compete for a spot against like 200 other people, all high level athletes. And to be honest, powerlifting is not high level athletes. I lift heavyweight one time and then I take a 5 minute break. You know, it's fantastic, but I'm not I'm not an Olympian. So I was like, this is really cool. 12-hour combine, like it was really crazy. But I was like, there's no way, you know? And I got that call, and I was one of the 15 guys that was there, and they used me for all of the marketing stuff. So if you Google, you know, Titan Games season 1, you'll see me right there behind the rock, and the season 1 winner, you know, so it was really cool. But man, the experience was crazy. It was seeing all of the chaos behind the scenes was really cool. But all of the people were amazing. The Rock was super down to earth, and we got to hang out with him for a little while. He was there for like 7 days. And he was just so down to earth. Have a conversation like this, he'd leave the room and we'd just be like, that was The Rock. Like he just was so chill and so cool. So I did tell him that I can deadlift more than him, and he laughed at me, but I meant it. So
That's funny. Did you ever hear his story about when he played football at Miami?
uh-uh.
It was very funny. He's like, yeah, you know, I was, you know, playing defensive end or whatever for University of Miami, and he said, you know, it's obviously a really good team, football. So he says this new guy comes in and he says, oh, you know, you're a defensive end. He goes, well, I'm taking that over. He's like, I'm going to be playing. He goes, like, no way. So he's like, I started working harder, working harder. I'm like, I'm going to keep this spot. I'm going to keep this spot. He goes, I lost the spot. He
Damn.
goes, it was Warren Sapp. He's
Oh,
like,
damn,
and I was
that's
just like,
amazing.
oh, yeah, there's not much you can do about that.
It's like you tried. And
Yeah,
like that's a perfect example of like sometimes things don't work out. And like
yeah,
I don't like when the entrepreneurs, especially on social media, will say things like, "You, no matter what, you can make it work." I'm like, well, then why do you have 7 different failed businesses that were different and this one worked? I'm not throwing anything bad at you, but I'm saying like you knew when to change lanes, you knew when to change course, you know. So there are times when you need to, and that's okay. That's completely okay. But there's a level of resilience that you should have, and also a level of adaptation or adaptability to know when maybe changing lanes is the move. You know, it's not quitting, it's redirecting. So don't be too stubborn, but at the same time, resilience is important. Life exists in that in between. So that's a good example of that, because he could have fought for it, he could have went after it, but look at what he's doing now. You know, so everything happens.
it's a fine line for sure, you know, and I think both of those skills are important. So let's talk about how you can help people. You wrote a new book, The Art of Changing Course. I know you mentioned it earlier, but can you tell us exactly what it's about and where we can get it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm in pre-order right now. I don't know when this will be released, but in pre-order till September 4th, and that's like 100% my focus. The first book I had, great, all about self-communication. This one is more about change and helping people as personal people, but also professional people and organizations to manage change. And I go through different phases of accountability and language to self-accountability to mentorship, and living life as the mentor you would want, and using that as a guideline to decide how you act on a daily basis and to sustain change, pretty much acting as that person constantly, so that keeps you on track to maintain that change, to be the person you needed most growing up constantly, so that you maintain that new course of action. I am not a big believer in huge changes immediately. I use a specific story in my book where if you took a flight from LAX to Milan, Italy, and it changed by 1 degree, you could either end up in Tunisia in Africa or Austria, completely different country with a 1 degree change. 1 degree shift over time in your life can make a drastic change. So you have to ask, is the trajectory I'm on helping me or hurting me? This book walks you through the exact process to do that. Really good stories, really good references, over 150 peer-reviewed studies and that. So I love the art, science, and philosophy of change, and helping people do that helped me. Everyone goes through change at their life, whether they want to or not. So I hope that this acts as a buffer between the kind of crappy side of what happens.
It's really powerful. That sounds like a great book. So,
Appreciate it.
absolutely. I mean, I love the perspective too of it, like if you're thinking about who you could have used the most, in your life and wanting to be that person. I mean, what better person to emulate? Because, if then you can become that person yourself, then I mean, that's fantastic. So, and then the last question that I always have to ask is, what is your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
I think you have to be honest with everything that you're doing and not doing. Write it down, make it real, and see it. Don't run from it. A lot of us lean too heavily into our strengths and ignore our weaknesses. Um, but don't polarize the board. Look at everything. What am I doing great? What do I need to do that's not working? What is that one thing that's holding me back? When I ask whether you're a business person or not, if I ask, what is the one thing that if you started changing on a daily basis, you would probably be a little better off? You know, it's not it's not hidden from you. It's uncomfortable. When I ask you, and you immediately want to shove it down and say no, no, no. But if you can be honest with yourself on that one thing or those two things that like I don't want to spend the morning like redesigning my workflow. I don't want to spend the morning. I know you don't want to. None of us do. I don't want to do calves at the gym, but we have to. So I think being honest and allowing yourself the vulnerability to acknowledge like where you might need a little bit of help, that helps a lot because it's so easy to get swallowed up in like, but I have to do this, but don't make excuses. Don't divert attention away from what needs to be addressed because that will be the death of your business. And the death of your business, you could only hope it would fail immediately. The worst is that it fails over the next 10 years. So I'd rather you face it now. You can't fix what you're not willing to face. I stand on that. You cannot fix what you're not willing to face. So honesty is everything. Yeah. The other piece of advice that I'd want to leave people with is this short story of you can be a lighthouse or a tugboat. A tugboat goes out there and rescues each ship individually. They have to spend all of their time and energy and risk everything to save one boat. And it's amazing. That's great. But a lighthouse stands in one place and can help hundreds, if not thousands of people. It's not their job to rescue them individually. And they don't put themselves on the line because it's a little too risky. To help more people, you have to stay in one place and bring people to you. I, for so long, tried to be a tugboat. In my business, in my life, I tried to go out there and help everyone individually. And I gave so much of my time and I was like trying so hard. I would give people free training programs and they wouldn't do anything. I would charge them when I was doing fitness and they would pay me thousands of dollars and then disappear. And I'm like, I'm chasing them. Why am I chasing you? And I was being a tugboat and I was getting frustrated. When I learned that whole lighthouse philosophy, I'm like, oh, I need to give without expectation of them receiving. I'm doing my job. And that's not selfish. That's being effective and optimal for myself, my family, and the people I'm helping who choose to be helped by that. You see the light, and if you don't listen to it, there's going to be a tugboat out there for you. I just hope it comes in time.
Yeah. Well, and the fact of the matter is, for anybody who wants to make a change or an improvement or accomplish anything, you can get help, you can get mentors, but
Absolutely. And
at
it's
the end of the
necessary.
day,
It's
yeah,
necessary.
but at the end of the day, you have a responsibility to do it too. Nobody's going to be able to do it for you. There's no value in things that people do totally for you anyway. The value is in the growth that you go through the process also. So that's great. I love the analogy too. Hadn't heard that one before. So very cool. So with that, it's just about time to wrap things up. I want to thank you again, Chris, so much for sharing all your insights and great tips with us. Visit Amazon.com to get his new book, The Art of Changing Course. Thanks for tuning in.